Welcome to this afternoon's webinar with me, Stuart Wright, Action Coach. The subject of today's webinar is about mindset. It was something that was requested at the last webinar that I did a couple of weeks, well, not the last one, one I did a couple of weeks ago now. Wow, the world has changed so quickly in the last couple of weeks. Just where is the time going? So yeah, we really want to sort of look at this mindset thing because obviously, it's not just what you do through this crisis that means that you're going to survive it and potentially thrive on the other side of it, but it's also how you think and how you behave, your beliefs, your values, your identity. All of that mindset stuff is going to make a big difference. Now, before we actually get going on this, what I want to do is just, I don't know how many of you have been used to using Zoom webinar before, so just a couple of housekeeping points. On this webinar, you are able to participate, and I'm looking for 100% participation. So, I will be asking you to put your comments in the chat box. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you've got the chat box. You've also got a question box there as well. If you put a question in the question and answer box, it's private, only I can see it. If you put a question in the chat box, as long as if you look at the very bottom of the chat box where it says to, if you select all panelists and attendees, then everybody can read your comments. That would be useful, very helpful actually, for any of the bits during this webinar where we want some group participation. It is a webinar, so I know that it does sometimes feel a little bit disconnected because you're on the other side of the screen and you're not in a room with me. However, I am going to look for 100% participation. So if you're happy to participate, you're going to participate with me 100% in the next hour, please raise your hand for me. Fantastic, that's everyone. Good start. The other thing as well is another rule of the game for me as well is I know that some of you may have been on webinars with me before. Some of you may have been to workshops with me in Harrogate at the wonderful running park. Some of you are actually working with me, so you would have been to my offices as well. Here's a rule of the game. Let me get this straight from the beginning. Some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today, you may have already heard. Some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today, you may already know. And you might ask yourself this question, why does he keep saying some of the same stuff over and over again? Well, let me tell you this. I'm going to keep saying it until you keep doing it. The point I'm trying to make here is that I know the two most expensive words in business. If I say something here today that you already know, change the language to I know that to isn't that interesting? Because it's not just about what we know that makes us successful. There's enough knowledge out there. There's enough information out there on the internet, free of charge, for you to get through anything, any crisis. There's enough information out there on the internet for you to be as successful as you ever want to be. Our challenge today is not information. Our challenge today is implementation. So although I may say some stuff today that you've heard before, just think to yourself, how much am I actually implementing? A great lesson I learned when I first became a business coach, I still had businesses. One of my businesses increased in profit with a 55% increase in profit in the first 6 months of me becoming a coach. Reason being is because a lot of the stuff that I was teaching and a lot of stuff that I was presenting was stuff that I was thinking to myself when I was doing it, you know what, I probably could do that a little bit better in my own business. So there's massive value in hearing things repeated. There's massive value in you asking yourself the question, although I know that, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good am I actually at doing it, or how well am I implementing it? So please, today, if you do hear some stuff that maybe you have heard before, or even that you don't agree with, just maybe just tell yourself that it's interesting anyway, so that you don't close your mind off to anything else that I might have to say. Right, so let's get on with this. And the first thing that I want to do really is to start with you guys and ask you a question. So the question is, how are you feeling? How are you feeling right now? Okay, we're here today to talk about mindset, so I may as well get from you, what is your current mindset? So in your chat box for me, please, just tell me, first thing that comes into your head, how are you feeling right now? What's your mindset like? How are you feeling? We've got a roller coaster of emotion. We've got great, we've got good, we've got really excited and scared all at the same time. I love it. We've got positive, upbeat, even though life is challenging on the business. Positive, nervous but positive, Fine. Great, thanks. Terrified. Bit startled. Just did a workshop with you, so I'm feeling great. Ah, there you go. You're buttering me up. I see. Pretty positive. Uncertain. Okay, so there's a bit of a roller coaster of emotions going on there for all of us. I'm certain. I know that one day you might feel like this, and then another day you might feel like that. What else have we got here? Mostly excited and positive, but sleepy right now. Let's see if we can wake you up a little bit. Positive, but slightly lost. Okay, so look, a range of emotions. I understand it completely. I think the message that I'm hearing everywhere is that we've got to survive this thing. And then if we survive this thing, we've also, during the period of survival, we've got to look for ways in which we can also thrive. What can we do during this lockdown period that means that we're going to come out of it stronger than we went into it? There's got to be some opportunity for business owners when they maybe aren't working flat out like they normally are to be doing some different stuff. Maybe you're actually one of those people who are already thinking about, well, what other opportunities are there going to be when I come outside the other side of this business, outside of this crisis? Is it opportunity for you to regrow and redouble the efforts in your business? Are you seeing opportunities for you to actually massively increase your business when you come out the other side because of supply and demand? Potentially, there's going to still be the demand there that there was before the crisis, but actually there may not be the supply of all of the competitors that you had in the marketplace. So you may be seeing that as an opportunity. You may be seeing opportunities for you to actually migrate and pivot into completely different businesses. So I don't know what your thoughts or what you're thinking right now, but what I would like to ask you is this. Just write down, if you've got a pen and paper, write down what 3 things would you like to change about your current situation. You don't need to put it in the chat box, but just write down on a piece of paper, what 3 things would you like to change about your current situation? Just give you a moment or two to do that. So what 3 things would you like to change about your current situation? Keep that piece of paper in mind, because we're going to be looking at some of the stuff that you might want to change and see what sort of things we can do to make sure that you actually get that change implemented through today's presentation, which is all about mindset. All right, so I want you to imagine for a moment, just go with me here, you'll understand when I get to the end of this. I want you to imagine that we're actually in a room and I brought in a plank of wood. And I'm going to ask the question, who on this webinar, by show of hands, would walk, by the way, the plank of wood, there's no catch to it, okay? It's about that wide, it's about that thick, and it's about 6 feet long, okay? So it's just a plank of wood and it's on the ground. And if I said, by show of hands, if we were in a room together, that I would give you 20 pounds to walk across that plank of wood, raise your hands if you would do that. Not a trick question, guys. It's a simple thing. I'm asking, if you walk across that plank of wood, I'm going to give you 20 quid. Okay? So pretty much everybody put their hand up on this call. The only people that either didn't understand the question, or they're so loaded they don't need 20 quid and they wouldn't walk across a plank of wood even if I gave them 50. But here's the thing, okay? Pretty much everybody on this call would raise their hand when I said, would you walk across that plank of wood if I gave you a reward of 20 quid at the end of it? Now I want to change the scenario a little bit. Let's imagine that I put that plank of wood between 2 skyscrapers. And actually, we'll make it a little bit worse. It's a windy day. Now it's a windy day. The skyscrapers are really, really high. And the plank of wood, the same plank of wood, mind you, same plank of wood is between 2 skyscrapers. Raise your hands if you would have a go at walking across that plank of wood for 20 quid. There's always one, always one. So that was Joe Wilson. Joe Wilson, you crazy chick. You would walk across a plank of wood between 2 skyscrapers on a windy day for 20 quid. Now, either times are really hard, Joe, or you just do anything for 20 quid. Oops. Hey, listen, Scratch that from the record. Okay, now here's the thing. I want to change the scenario one more time, guys. Okay, well, let me ask you this before I do. Okay, why would you do it when the plank of wood was on the ground, but you wouldn't do it between skyscrapers? In your question box, in your chat boxes, please, not your question box, in your chat box, so we can all see your answers. Why would you not walk across exactly the same plank of wood when it's between two skyscrapers with 20 quid, but you would when it was on the floor? So we've got risk versus reward. We've got death. We've got it's too risky. Risk is too great for a small reward. I quite like being alive. Risk is higher. Risk analysis, it's not worth it. Risk too big for reward. I want more cash. I want more cash for that. So maybe, Rachel, if I said, would you do it for 20 million, Rachel? If you would, raise your hand. Yeah, a few of you would for 20 million. Okay, fine. So risk versus reward. Absolutely. I get it. I understand it completely. Now, let's change the scenario a little bit more, okay? So I just want to point out that the building that you are standing on, I just want you to imagine that that is an empty building. It's a derelict building. How you got in there is anyone's guess, but no children or animals were hurt in this demonstration, okay? But I want you to imagine you get a telephone call from one of your friends and they can see you on the top of the building and they say, I've got bad news for you. The building's on fire. In fact, let's make it even worse. You've got one of your kids with you. Okay, so now the building's on fire and you've got about 20 minutes to get off the building and your only mode of escape is the plank of wood that I put there between the two buildings. Raise your hand if you're having to go at getting off the building now, please raise your hands. Hey, well, that was quick. Everybody raised their hands. Of course you would, of course you would. Okay, so in your chat box, what changed? What was the change? Why would you go across that plank of wood? Suddenly you're motivated to go across the plank of wood. What's that all about? The motivation changed. It's the only option. Motivation, no choice, need, risk of stopping was far greater than moving. Do anything for my kids. That's lovely. Your telepathic hero, knowing how to put a plank of wood there. Indeed. Threat to my life, motivation, higher risk, little reward. Life depends on it. Need change, need change, need change. More danger staring where you are. You're absolutely right. Every single one of you. You see, the thing is, there's only two things that motivate human beings. Only two. In the chat box, what are the only two things that motivate human beings? What are they? Come on, guys. Risk and a reward. Pain avoidant. Pursuit of pleasure. Pain, pleasure. Absolutely. You got it right. Absolutely. At any given moment in your life, you're doing everything you possibly can to avoid pain. And at every given moment in your life, you're doing everything you possibly can to seek pleasure, whether you know it consciously or subconsciously. It's the truth. There it is. It's indisputable. You cannot deny it every single time. In your chat box, of those two things, pain, moving away from pain or seeking pleasure, which do you think is the most motivational? Which is the one that's the strongest? Pain, avoiding pain, moving from pain avoidance. You're absolutely right. If you've got toothache, how motivated are you to go to the dentist? If you want to get your teeth whitened, it can wait, right? So you're absolutely right. But in your chat box, what is the one thing that makes people stay where they are? What's the most common thing? Why do people stay where they are? In your chat box, what is it? Fear, we've got fear, we've got fear, we've got fear of change, we've got fear of change, complacency, fear. Absolutely. Fear is the one thing that stops people from moving forward. So imagine if you go back to the scenario when I put the plank of wood between the two buildings and the building wasn't on fire, the reason why you maybe wouldn't have gone across the plank of wood at that time was because of fear of falling, fear of death. And then suddenly the scenario changes and you've got the building on fire, then the fear of staying where you are is now greater than the fear of going across the plank of wood, and now you're moving. Okay, now here's the thing about fear. It's a 4-letter word. I'm sure you've seen this before, but false expectations appearing real. So at every given moment, you're doing everything you can to avoid pain, and every given moment, you're doing everything you can to seek pleasure. So fear Fear is what? Just a thought of what if I can't, or what if. You've handled everything else in your life before up to this point. You've handled everything, every single thing you have handled so far. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Well, if you've handled everything else up to this point, I think we can assume that you can handle everything else that comes your way. True or false? Absolutely, you can. Of course, you can. You can handle anything that comes your way because you've already handled it before. 95% of everything we ever fear never happens. The stuff that does, we've handled it. A great book for you to read while you've got plenty of time on your hands is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Even the title of that book says it all. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Raise your hands if you've read the book, please. Raise your hands if you've read the book. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's by a lady called Susan Jeffers. Very few people on the call have read the book. So I really recommend you read the book. Now would be a great time to read that book, guys. Really would. So, you know, you've got plenty of time on your hands, I'm guessing, for some of you. And now would be a great time to work on yourselves and work on your mindset. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Great book. So this is the thing that happens, though. When we are frightened, we get a response, one of three responses generally. And it's an instinctive response in us. We have the flight response, we have the freeze response, and we have the fight response. That is a natural inbuilt instinct within human beings because, like it or not, we are animals. And that is an instinctive response that we get when we are frightened. Now, we're in a crisis at the moment, and some people might be feeling a little bit frightened. Maybe not all the time, but from time to time. You know, I think the fear is heightened when you hear the news each day, and maybe sometimes something new has happened. Maybe it's a new piece of information, and then the fear comes flooding back again. And then sometimes it's just a little voice in your head when you're in your quiet moments that starts chattering to you. In the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, Susan talks about the chatterbox, you know, the voice that keeps telling you stuff. And that voice, you know what? It has a purpose because actually the voice is there to keep you alive. That voice is there to look for, it's there to make you fearful. But the challenge for us nowadays is that the stuff that we used to have to be afraid of don't really exist anymore. You know, what we used to be afraid of. 10,000 years ago, 8 out of 10 of our ancestors died from violent death or starvation. They had a lot to be fearful about, okay? And they may have been chased down and eaten by predators when they were on their way to work, which, by the way, was hunting and gathering. But nowadays, we don't have those things to fear, but we still feel fear. We still get frightened, and we still have the same emotional inbuilt response within us as if we were being chased down by a tiger. So I understand that it's difficult to overcome that stuff. And actually, you know what? You can't overcome it. The challenge for us is that courage is not about the absence of fear. Courage is about having the fear and dealing with it anyway. So you've got a choice. You have a choice as to whether or not you go into flight mode and run away from the challenges that you've got. You have a choice as to whether you freeze and do nothing, or your final choice is to fight. Now, you know, my recommendation is right now, we need to be fighting. And in order to be fighting, I'm going to recommend that the best way to get through this stuff is to stop panicking, create a plan, and then take the action. So raise your hands if you've already created a great plan for the next 90 days. Wow, not enough people have created a plan for the next 90 days. I mean, you know what? I'm finding myself at this moment in time speaking to people about stuff that, you know, probably they should be doing during this 90-day period. But I'm going to also suggest that maybe it would be a good idea to continue doing it after this 90-day period and for every 90 days for the rest of the time you're in business. Because, you know, I mean, well, let me ask you this question. What are the benefits of having a plan? In the chat box, please. What are the benefits of having a plan? Goals, fantastic. Benefits of goals as well. Direction and goals. It will happen when it's written down. Keeps you focused. Structure to measure results. Remind yourself of your goals. Measurables. Motivation. Keeps you focused. Feel more in control. Fantastic, Chris. Direction. Considered all your options. Understanding workload and being able to invoice. Absolutely. Focus, structure, goals. Nothing in that chat box is negative. In other words, everything you said about creating a plan is a positive thing. So, if you haven't got a plan for the next 90 days, then maybe you should think about doing one. Now, I'm going to do I did a plan last Friday with a whole bunch of people, and it's really geared towards what we need to do over the next 90 days. Now, we're going to be doing more plans throughout this process as well to make sure that people are actually planning. The next one I'm going to do is the last Friday of this month, because, we're going to need to update our plans on a regular basis through this process. Why? Because none of us really knows what's going to happen. It drives me mad when I hear about all these so-called experts talking about what they think is going to happen through the coronavirus outbreak, economic turndown. You know what? None of us know what's going to happen. But by being an expert in something, then surely you've had some experience. But none of us have had any experience of this, so we don't know what's going to happen. So my recommendation on plan, guys, is to look at different scenarios that you think may or may not occur, and plan for each of those different scenarios as best as you can. Then dial it back to what are we actually on today? Which of these tracks are we on today? Which of these scenarios are we on today? So that day by day, you can look to see, are we still on this track? Or has the world shifted again? Has something changed? And we're going to need to change track again. At the moment, as far as best we know, is lockdown was going to be for 3 weeks and they were going to review it. Well, they may review it in 3 weeks' time and say, hey, another 2 weeks and we're out of this. Or they may review it in 3 weeks' time and say, we need another 3 months of this stuff. I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me that both of those things are different scenarios, and we have to plan for those different scenarios, because cash is going to get pretty tight if it's going to be a lot longer that we're in lockdown. So let's make sure that we're taking any kind of panic and turning it into a plan, and fight for it. You've built this business book to what you've done so far. You're not going to let it go for something like this. You've got to fight for it, because if it's important enough to you, you will find a way. If it's not important enough to you, you will find an excuse. Okay, so what I showed you earlier on the burning building was what I call, or what we call in Action Coach, the formula for change. And here it is. D times V plus F needs to be greater than R. If you've seen this before, then just remember, it's about implementation. It's about not already knowing this stuff. So let me tell you what these symbols stand for. So D is dissatisfaction, or as we said earlier on, pain, potential. The pain that you're in now, or the pain that you're likely to be in if you don't move. So if you think about the burning building, the dissatisfaction wasn't particularly great when the building wasn't on fire. And there would have been an enormous amount of resistance to moving, because the other side of the formula is about resistance. How resistant are you to making that change? So thinking about the changes that you wrote down earlier on that you want to make, we're going to come to those in a minute. I'm going to ask you the question, how resistant are you to making those changes? Because one of the biggest things as resistance, we've already discovered, is fear. So how fearful are you of making that change? So dissatisfaction, that's either dissatisfaction in the current moment or dissatisfaction with what our situation would be if we don't change things right now. And then the vision is a vision of something better. You see, on the burning building, the dissatisfaction of staying there for the next 20 minutes while the building burns down would be pretty hefty, okay? So if you just think about it, there's an industry out there, there's a whole industry that is built on the idea of dissatisfaction in the future. In your chat box, what is that industry? What industry trades on? That's it. Insurance. Absolutely. Insurance. Horoscopes. Fantastic. Oh, listen, not all horoscopes have got bad things happening in the future. So, that may or may not be the case. But vision is also something that we really need to consider. So the pleasure that we will receive from achieving a new vision. So in my burning building example, the vision of walking across the plank of wood to get to the other side where the building wasn't on fire was much, much more satisfying than the idea of staying where we are. So here's the thing. What about first steps? See, on the burning building, the first steps were 10 out of 10. They were absolutely assured. The only way to get off the building, no other choice, was to go across the plank of wood. So on the left-hand side of the formula, everything on the left-hand side of the formula is marked out of 10. So dissatisfaction out of 10, vision out of 10. First steps only adds 10 points, but it's always 10 out of 10. Think about it. If you're dissatisfied currently with your state of health and you've got a vision of better health, maybe from the point of view that you'll live longer, feel better, have more energy, and look better in your swimming trunks or your bikini on the beach, that's if we ever get to the beach this year, then think about it. The first steps are obvious. Eat less and move more, guaranteed that you're going to be able to lose weight. Okay? So flipping heck, guys. First steps are always 10 out of 10. The plank of wood was always 10 out of 10. But here's the challenge. It only adds 10 points. The bit that really makes a difference is the heightened dissatisfaction and the heightened vision of something better. Because resistance is always marked out of 100. So what I want you to do right now, here's an exercise for you. Choose one of the things that you said you wanted to change from earlier on and mark yourself out of 100 on resistance. That's everything on the right side of the equation. Out of 100, you don't need to put it in your chat box, but out of 100, how resistant are you or how fearful are you to make that particular change on a scale of 1 to 100? So write that down on a piece of paper. Next, on the other side of the equation, ask yourself this question. You want to make that change. So where you are at the moment, there's a certain amount of dissatisfaction. Or potentially where you will be if you stay and you don't make the change, there will be a certain amount of dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction, I want you to mark out of 10. So, 1 is, you know what, I'm not really that dissatisfied. It doesn't really matter that much. It's not really that important to me. I'm okay as I am. Thank you very much. 10 is absolutely, I am really dissatisfied with this. I'm in a lot of pain right now. I don't want to keep feeling this way. I do not want to not change things and find in 5 years' time that I'm still stuck in this same situation that I am now. That's going to be 10 out of 10. And then give yourself a mark on vision as well. In other words, have you got crystal clarity over what the vision, the goal, the target, the dream actually looks like for you as to what's it going to look like if you make this particular change? And give yourself a mark out of 10 on that. And the first steps, maybe you know what the first steps are, maybe you don't know what the first steps are, okay? But there should be a certain amount of certainty that if you do the things that you need to do, you will make the change. You may know exactly what you need to do. You may not know. But the thing is, the best thing about setting goals is sometimes is not actually to set them with any knowledge of how you're actually going to achieve those things. So ask yourself the question, do you know what the first steps are? And if you do, give yourself a mark out of 10 on how certain you are that if you take those first steps, you will actually achieve what you're looking to achieve. So here's an example for you. I want you to actually work out these numbers. So an example would be, you might be 80 out of 100 in terms of how resistant you are to make that change, but you might actually be 9 out of 10 dissatisfied. Or you might be 8 out of 10 in terms of how important the vision is to you. And you might say, well, actually, I know that if I learn the social media skills, if I learn the marketing skills, if I learn how to grow my business, if I learn how to systemize my business, then I absolutely know 100% that I'm going to be able to change, make this change. Whatever it is, the change that you want to make. So work out what your scores are. Now, here's the thing. If that was your score, you're 82 on the left-hand side of the equation and you're 80 on the right-hand side of the equation. Anytime that the stuff on the left-hand side of the equation is greater than the stuff on the right-hand side of the equation, anytime that that is the case, you are going to make the change. If it's not, then you're not ready for whatever reason. Then you have to reduce your resistance. So what I'd like you to do, you don't have to tell me what the change was or anything like that, but in the chat box, if you've just worked that out for yourself, then you're either going to be ready or you need to reduce resistance. So in your chat box, put either the words ready or reduce resistance for me, so we can see what kind of actions people are going to need to take as a result of this webinar here today. I've got reduce, I've got ready, 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 reduce, ready, 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 totally ready, ready, reduce. Wow, someone there is incredibly ready. 87 on the left, 10 on the right. Ready, 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 reduce. So majority of people are ready, and some people need to reduce. And the reduction in resistance is usually about, well, is there anybody who has written reduce on here who would be happy for me to just have a quick conversation with them? Raise your hand if you would. Someone who on here wrote reduce, who I could just have a quick conversation with. Raise your hand if you would. Leslie, so I'm just going to unmute Leslie. Let me find Leslie. Okay, Leslie, I'm just going to allow you to talk. You are now unmuted. Hello, Leslie.
Hello.
Hi there. So, what sort of, what do you think is the resistance that you've currently got?
Definitely fear, definitely.
So what sort of things do you feel like you need to do to reduce that fear then?
I have a lot of ideas, and then it's like dipping your toe into the water. So I go so far and then I pull back. So I have all sorts of ideas about the kind of ways I could change things or do things. But as you say, kind of when you were talking about the book, the mind natter kind of kicks in, yeah. And that would be too hard. That would put you out there, and do you really want to be out there? I kind of have a little bit of an argument with myself.
Yeah, okay. Well, it is a little bit like having an argument with yourself, isn't it? Because you've got this rational thinking brain on the one hand that says, no, look, it's all fine. And then the other side, you've got the emotional part of the brain that says, no, you shouldn't do that. You're going to suffer. So yeah, understandable. So, do you have someone to talk to about that stuff or to help you with it?
Not really. Mostly I've just got on with my business, got on with it, done the work. It's growing slowly, which is kind of, I suppose I'm a bit comfortable with that and not pushing myself out of the comfort zone, sort of, well, I've got the work, I should do it. But more and more people are doing what I do now, and in lots of different ways. So what I do need to do is find my niche in it, if you like. Whereas I've had the work, so I think, well, I don't really have to push myself. But of course now that work has stopped. What I am doing is working online a bit, which is definitely pushing me out of my comfort zone because I hate IT. But yeah, so we're having a go. But
okay, well,
it's not big.
I suppose my follow-up question to that is, are you certain that you know enough about what you need to do and who you need to become in order to overcome this stuff?
Probably not, no.
Okay. So maybe that's a good place to start. So, for example, you mentioned niche, and, niche is a really important thing for all of us small businesses to be really certain about. And there's some really, really useful processes that you can go through to really hone your niche and also to learn how to articulate the voice of your business, which is really how to actually present your niche to the right kind of marketplace. Now, I'm not going to do it today, but there is a session that I do all about niche, and it's coming up in later on in the year on one of my Profit Club sessions, which is an early morning session that we do. Hopefully, we'll be back to normal. We'll be able to do it in person. But would it be okay if we let you know about that, so you could potentially join us either online or at that session?
Yeah, that would be great.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your contribution so far, Leslie. Thank you. Okay, so bear with me 2 ticks. Just need to move on a little bit. All right, guys. So thanks for doing that. Problems on planet Earth. Well, we know we have problems on planet Earth, but actually the point of this slide is this. If you don't nip the problems in the bud, then they have a tendency to gather momentum and they increase in size, and then they tend to come back and bite you on the bum. You've got to attend to them promptly. And here's the thing. I want to talk about problems for a moment and how we deal with them. And this is one of my favorite sort of suggested models for how we deal with problems. Ask yourself a question first and foremost. Do you have a problem? If the answer to that is no, then why worry? If the answer to that is yes, then the next question needs to be, can you do something about it? If the answer to that question is no, then why worry? If the answer to the question is yes, then get on and do it, and why worry? You see, the thing is, I'm sure you'll agree with me, worrying or panicking doesn't actually help anybody. It doesn't help you, and it doesn't help anybody else outside of you either. And, you know, so the best way to get rid of all of that stuff, if you can actually do something about it, the yes piece, the answer is really to do a plan and take the actions and do everything that you possibly can to overcome that particular problem that you've got. But worrying doesn't actually solve anybody's problems. It's never going to solve them. In fact, the answer is that it probably makes them worse. So I think it's important to understand, you know, the process that we go through when we deal with problems. So let's look at problems in a bit more detail. You see, there's a tendency for some of us, as I said earlier on, when we get through that whole fear thing, to actually run away from our problems. And if we do that, they tend to just get bigger. So if we're using that analogy, when we're running along the roadway of life, normally we get those taps on the shoulder when we stray off course. It could be our conscience might be giving us taps on the shoulder and saying, hey, you know what? You're not actually taking the actions that you should be taking. You may not be exhibiting the right kind of habits that are actually going to get you to your end goal. I think it was Jim Rohn that said that discipline and habits are the keys to success. And habits, if you look at just a few small habits or disciplines repeated every day, is what leads to success. And conversely, a few small errors of judgment repeated daily is what leads to potential disaster. So we all have those taps on the shoulder as we're running along the roadway of life. And if we ignore them, the challenge is that what we can do, it could take us off the road, and then we're going to hit a lamppost. And it may then take a lot more vigorous action to get us back on track. Then for some of us at the moment, we may have had some taps on the shoulder about cash flow before we went into this particular crisis. And cash is king in this crisis. If you went into this crisis cash strapped, then it's maybe a lamppost time for you right now. And I hope it doesn't happen, but it can sometimes lead to falling under a bus. So that, you know, I'm doing a webinar next Wednesday on cash flow management. And cash flow is one of those little indicators that could be a tap on the shoulder that we shouldn't be ignoring. And we can't just run away from it. We certainly can't freeze, and we certainly can't dig our head in the sand. So we need to be certain that we are listening to those little taps on the shoulder before we start going off track, and heaven forbid, before we actually end up going under a bus. I hope that's making sense. If that is making sense to you, please just raise your hand. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your feedback. So let's go into the whole problem issues and problem solving. Because if we've got some problems, then let's see if we can deal with them. A wise man once said to me, Stuart, there's no such thing as a lack of resources. There's only lack of resourcefulness. And I think that is true. You know, being entrepreneurial is about being resourceful. You may have a lack of physical resources right now, or you may be feeling the pinch a little bit more than you normally would. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you're not resourceful. You may not have as much in the bank account as you would like to have right now. That does not mean that you're not resourceful. So we need to get resourceful if we're going to solve some of these problems. Decide you're going to stop focusing on the problem and start focusing on the solution. I'm pretty sure most of you will have already done that. 2 weeks ago, I was seeing a lot of people focusing on the problem and not focusing on the solution. If that's not you, if you're still focusing on the problem, not solution, when would now be a good time to stop doing that stuff? Get perspective from other people that have successfully dealt with this kind of problem before. Now, you may say to me, oh, you know what, we haven't actually dealt with this kind of problem before. But actually, you know what, the economic downturns we have dealt with them. Now, maybe we had more warning last time. Maybe they weren't as quick last time. In fact, in 2008, it took a lot of people a long time to decide we were actually having a problem. Now, we definitely know that we're having a bit of a challenge, okay? So I'm talking about getting perspective from other people who have successfully dealt with downturns in business. Maybe even people who have successfully had a business go pop and then come back from it. Whatever it is, it's better to follow someone else down the path through the jungle than it is to try and battle your own way through the jungle. Okay, so of course you've got to get perspective from other people. Also, remember a tough time in your life when you pulled yourself through. Like I said earlier on, 95% of everything we ever fear never happens, and the stuff that we did fear, well, it happened and you're still here. Okay, so just think about that as well for yourself. What sort of where has there been a time in your life where you've had a difficult situation and you pulled yourself through? Think about how it felt at the time. You probably didn't even know how you were going to pull yourself through, but you did. And believe that as long as you're doing something for the greater good and that you're committed, there's always a way. So if I went back to the slide earlier on, you've got a problem, can you do something about it? The answer is yes. Do what you can. Do what you can. That's all you can do. Just do what you can and do it with a plan. And there's always a way. Okay? And even if the worst comes to the worst, you know what? This too will pass. You will definitely get through this without a shadow of a doubt. Okay. Next, define the current situation. Write it down. Do not define the current situation in your head anymore. If you haven't been writing this stuff down yourself, you need to get writing it down, okay? You get it out of your head, it's going to be so much easier for you to deal with if you get it out of your head. Promise you, you need to write this stuff down. Factually as possible. Don't give yourself a story about it. Write down the facts. You have to see things as they really are, not worse than they really are. Then see things as you want them to be, and then make them what you want them to be. So get a clear vision of what you really want. If it's not crystal clear, if you haven't got it written down, if you can't visualize it, if you don't know with absolute crystal clarity what it is that you really want, you're going to find it very difficult to get there. And again, write it down. A clear vision of what you want is no good in your head. Get it out of your head. Get it written down. Take a picture of it if you have to. But please get it out of your head. Get it written down. That's when it's crystal clear. Then list the resources you have available to you, and any constraints or limitations that you might have. List all the resources available to you. I'm not just talking about financial resources. I'm talking about time. I'm talking about people. Who can you reach out to that can help you with this stuff? So list all of those resources, not just your financial resources. Okay, so let's think about focus for a minute. Think about where you are focusing, okay? Here's the circle of, you could call it comfort zone, circle of concern, circle of influence, circle of control, okay? The stuff that we can control is the inner circle. The circle of influence is stuff that we can actually influence through our actions. The circle of concern, well, I haven't put it as a circle of worry, but it is concern, is stuff that we actually can't do anything about. So please, in the chat box, just put down some stuff in there that you know for absolute certain you can actually control or influence. What sort of things can you control or influence? In your chat box, please. Activity, how to use my time. Attitude, Tor McKenzie, fantastic answer. Feelings, how I use my time going forward. Time and emotions. Mindset, attitude, organization. Absolutely. You can choose how you feel about things. Okay? So if you're feeling frustrated, it's a choice. If you like feeling frustrated, then fine, keep feeling that way. If you don't like feeling frustrated, choose some other way to feel. If you're choosing to feel worried at this moment in time, if you like feeling worried, that's fine. Keep feeling worried. If you don't like feeling worried, maybe you could choose to feel another way. You see, you can choose your emotions. Great book for you coming up. Are you ready? It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Now, that book is all about how he and some of his friends survived Auschwitz. Not a nice experience, as you can imagine. The first half of that book is probably one of the most harrowing things I've ever read in my life. But what he says in that book is the way they got through it was by having control and not giving up control of how they felt to the Nazis. They didn't give up control of how they felt. They didn't give up control of their attitude. One of the greatest things that they did was they lived their lives in Auschwitz to help other people. The more they helped other people, the better they felt about themselves and the better they controlled their attitude. So we've got to be absolutely certain that we're doing this stuff. You can train, the two things that you can really control are your state of mind and what things mean to you. Next, here's an exercise. I want you to think about that outer ring of that model. Make a list of the things that you can't control or influence, but you continue to waste time on anyway. Give you a minute or so just to do that. Write down some of the things that you have no control or influence over, but you continue to waste time on anyway. Write a couple of those things down right now. And be honest with yourself. You know what your thoughts and your feelings have been just recently. Be honest with yourself, completely honest, and write down some of the things that you have been wasting time on that you have no control or influence over. Next, write down all the reasons why you know it's silly, ridiculous, stupid, and insane to spend time on those things. Petra said she can't control what will happen in the economy. You're absolutely right. So there's no time wasting. There's no point in wasting any time worrying about that stuff because you can't control it. All you can do is you have complete control, should you choose to, over your own emotions, your own thoughts, your own feelings, what things mean, your state of mind, and then what to do about it. Next. Have a think about this. Write a simple phrase that you're going to start using to develop a new belief about this stuff, i.e., the economy is crashing, it's crashing all around me, I can't control that, let me focus on what I can control. You got a phrase there, and you're going to start programming your brain with the positive stuff, making sure that you are actually taking care of stuff that you should be taking care of and not worrying about the rest of it. Okay, moving on. What else have we got to focus on? Okay, so focus. 3 areas, really. Your focus can only ever be in one of these areas. Okay, one of these places, either the past, the present, or the future. So remember the rules. The past is for learning and strength. The only reason to go back into the past or to learn from it and give us confidence. So learning and strength. Learning from mistakes helps us gain in strength. I'm hoping that people are writing a learning log right now at this moment in time so that we can learn from what do we need to do in a downturn. Because that's what this is. If we can learn this stuff, then we're going to be better prepared for it next time. Keep eliminating distractions. The present is the only place to get things done, so limit your distractions. If you've ever seen the movie Kung Fu Panda, they put it really well in that. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. You know, you can, the only place that you can get things done are right here and now and in the present, okay? And, you know, if you're spending far too much time in the future worrying about what's going on there, you know, that's not a good place to be. The future is not something you have ultimate control over, but you can influence your future with what you actually do now. So here we go. The number one business goal for all of us right now, or goals, I would suggest, are the following. Putting prospects into your sales funnel by continuing to do marketing, especially digital marketing, or potentially doing digital marketing that you've never done before, or other types of marketing, but obviously at social distance, which is why digital marketing is so good at this moment in time. But make sure that if you are doing that marketing, you're doing it with compassion and not overly salesy. The future, well, that's as bright as you want it to be, okay? So putting cash in the bank, keeping solvent, building a better business. I think those are the kind of goals that we're probably going to be looking at right now for the future. And, you know, let's get really clear about what those goals need to be. Set yourself goals. If you're not setting goals, you're not going to have the focus, because the power of goals, absolutely vital. These are the things that mean that people are going to truly succeed. The people that truly succeed are the ones that know exactly what they want, the goal. They know why they want it. So they don't just set a meaningless goal. They set a goal that means something to it, that they're passionate about, that gives them purpose. And they know what it will take to make it happen. In other words, a massive action plan. And if they don't know what it will take, they learn the stuff that it will take, okay? So it's like the conversation I was having earlier on with Leslie. Some of the times the stuff that keeps us in fear is the fear of the unknown. If you knew what to do with 100% clarity to bring in the number of customers that you need, in other words, you knew the sales and marketing strategies that would do that for you, you would have no fear over it. You're much more likely to want to do it, and you're much more likely to execute it with precision. The power of goals then. Goals, they're like the compass for your brain. So you need to set the compass. So why are goals so powerful? What do goals give us? In your chat box, why are goals so powerful? Focus, absolutely. What else? Focus is the brain. Yes, indeed. What else? Something to aim for, set of course of action, purpose, motivates us. Focus on positive things, motivation to keep forward, plan, a target to aim for. What achieving our goals makes of us. Nice one, I like it. Well, absolutely, guys. They give us focus, they give us momentum, they give us direction. Okay, the direction is the compass, but everything else, the focus and the momentum, that's why they're so important. So how often should you be setting goals? In your chat box, how often you should be setting goals? If they're that flipping good, how often should you be doing them? Fiona, daily. Rachel, daily. Monthly? Ooh, yes, indeed, but daily, daily, daily. Absolutely, guys, daily goals. I'm not suggesting that your long-term and your long-range and medium-range goals are not important. Of course they are, because, you know, motivation comes and goes, but drive is what keeps you going for those longer-term goals. But of all the goals that we make, I would suggest that the most important ones are the daily goals. Why? Because you achieve your results through the aggregation of marginal gains. Few, simple disciplines and habits repeated daily is what leads to the successes. And that means we've got to have goals to aim for every single day. Not saying that the other goals aren't important, guys. They are. Any goals are important. But if you're not setting yourself goals daily, you're missing a trick. So goals, got to be challenged if you're going to achieve your goals. Someone said earlier on that they were a bit scared and excited. Brilliant. I love that phrase. I think it was my mentor, Brad Sugars, that said, if your dreams don't scare and excite you, they're not big enough. Why do we set mediocre goals then, guys? Why is it that so many of our goals are mediocre? In the chat box, please. Why do we set mediocre goals? Because when we're kids, we don't. You know, when we're kids, we set massive goals. I remember the goals that I set when I was a kid. You know, I wanted to go to the moon and stuff like that. Absolutely. No self-belief, fear, safety, comfort, frightened of failure. Absolutely. These are the reasons why we don't set ourselves massive goals. But another one is really important, guys. Sometimes we don't believe we're good enough. Sometimes we don't believe that we are good enough to achieve those things. In other words, we have limiting beliefs. Sometimes those things have come from other people that have instilled their own limiting beliefs on us. Or we may have some evidence of something we did in the past that didn't work particularly well, so it's given us a limiting belief. And sometimes we just don't know how we're going to achieve them. If you knew with 100% certainty that you could not fail, what goals would you set for yourself then? That's a question to ask yourself on a regular basis. If you knew with 100% certainty that you could not fail, then what goals would you achieve? You see, the thing is, if anyone else has ever achieved what it was that you set yourself out to achieve, the big, hairy, audacious goal, if anyone else has ever achieved that, why not you? What is so special about that? Really, all it is, they learned something different to you. That was all. They took a different path in their learning, and that was all. Remember, if you want to earn more, guys, you've got to learn more first. Okay, so we're going to achieve our goals. There's going to have to be some challenges going on here, okay? We need to challenge ourselves. Now, that could be the pull goal of amazing inspiration or vision, or it could be the push goal of desperation and survival. Now, here's the thing, on both of those scales, there is challenge. We feel challenged and pushed to survive, and we may be in desperation and survival mode, some of us right now, and we may be challenged to be pulled all the way up to the inspiration and vision. And when we get out of desperation and survival mode, we might, somewhere between those two things, feel successful. And then what happens is we get into our comfort zone, which I'm going to suggest is a really dangerous place to be. So if you're not feeling comfortable right now, hey, that might be a really good thing, you know? Maybe it's not such a bad thing to feel uncomfortable, because it gives us the challenge to do something else. I love this expression, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. So yes, we need to get ourselves out of this mess that we're in at the moment. And the key to life and success in terms of what you want to have at the end of this is not just what you do, but it's also who you are. Your mindset, your beliefs, your skills, your identity, your values, and the environment. You know, you need to ask yourself this question: is your environment controlling you, or are you controlling it? You need that resilience, that mental toughness to get you through this. So if we want 100% of everything we want to have, it's a combination of not just what we do, but also who we become. So let's have a think about how that actually works when it comes to achieving goals. So we've got this inspiration and vision, and we have to validate the strength of that goal with the why. Brilliant book for you coming up. If you've never read it before, fantastic book to read. Start with Why, Simon Sinek. Raise your hands if you've read the book, please. Raise your hands if you've read the book. Simon Sinek, Start with Why. We've got a few people on the call that have read it. Again, make a note of it, guys. If you've not read it, you're going to have a lot of time for reading, a lot of time for self-development. Work harder on yourself than you do on your business. If you work hard on your business, you can make a living. You work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. In this next 90 days, be working harder on yourself than you ever have done before. Read that book, Start with Why, Simon Sinek. We have to validate the strength of the goal. And our thoughts, either positive or negative thoughts, are then the sorts of things that then create within us the emotions. And when we have the thought, it leads to emotion. The emotion really leads to a physical response. So if that is fear, it's either fight, flight, or freeze, as we said earlier on. Then that leads to an action. And then the action usually comes around again to another thought. Then we've got to talk about the habits as well. So because things become easier when they become habitual. And these are just your repeated behaviors. Again, positive and negative habits. Great book for you to read coming up. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Fantastic book if you want to understand the power of habit and how to use habits to change all sorts of different things in your life. Next, what you do and actually how you do the stuff you do. Now, here's the thing. The inspiration and the vision is what we want to have. This stuff over here is what we want to do. Everything else on this side of the equation is who we need to be. Our ultimate vision is our driving force, who we want to become, what we want for our lives, what we stand for, how we want to be remembered. Our ultimate purpose tells us why we want to do this, why we are here. And finally, our actions are guided by our code of conduct, our emotions, and a set of standards. So those are the things that we need to really be considering if we're going to achieve all of this stuff. And it's like a circle. You know, when you achieve some of those goals, it goes all the way around again, all the way around again. And we constantly need to be striving for those things. It's been said that the guys that went to the lunar landing, when they came back from the moon, had very little purpose anymore. And they really struggled to actually find anything new to aim for, We constantly need to be striving and aiming for new things, because that gives us purpose. It gives us a reason to keep moving. In order to move and grow, we need pressure. And that pressure creates emotion. This is what I call perturbation. We normally feel a little bit uncomfortable. We feel pressure. We don't like the feeling, but you know what? We actually need to stay in that perturbation if we're going to get a breakthrough. It usually looks like this. We start and everything's all positive. Then things get a little bit difficult. Maybe we go through a crisis like we are at the moment, and we're feeling perturbed. And for some of us, maybe too many of us, sadly, we may end up just saying, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go back and get a job after this. It's much more secure. But if we can keep in that perturbation, then hopefully we can make a breakthrough on the other side, and then we get to success. But at the end of the day, guys, that's your choice. You have a choice as to what you want to do. And breakthroughs normally follow a breakdown. Raise your hands if you've had a bit of a breakdown in the last couple of weeks. Raise your hands if you have. Okay. Nice for you. Some of you are admitting it. Fantastic. What about this? Sometimes we need to break apart. Sometimes we need to break apart from some of the people or some of the traditions or some of the ways that we've done before. Maybe we need to break with some of those traditions. Maybe we need to break with the traditions, break with the business model that we were using before. Maybe the world is not going to be the same again. Maybe we need to change things completely. Or maybe we just need to scrap the whole thing and start again. But you know what? There's no such thing as failure. There's only the failure to participate. If you don't go at it again, if this is going to be the end for you, and I really hope it isn't, the worst thing you could possibly do is not give it another go, because you've learned so much so far. So let's talk about pressure, because there's good pressure and there's not so good pressure. We need a bit of pressure if we're going to perform. This is the performance pressure curve. And actually, the optimum performance is somewhere up there. And on the left-hand side of that, we need to add pressure. In other words, we need to get emotional, get some grit, determination, pump ourselves up a little bit, shout at the mirror. And then on the other side of this, we maybe need to reduce pressure, because on the other side of this, we're going into what I call stress pressure. And that's when we need to calm down a little bit, slow down, stop, breathe, think, consider our options, plan, and then take action. That's when we need to do the stuff in writing. So if you've been feeling a little bit more over the top pressure on the other side, that is more the stress pressure, which isn't the useful type of pressure, then maybe you need to consider to learn to put your thoughts on paper, rant if you feel like it. But what happens is it adds a sense of composure. And then you're going to feel more like the ice. Because what we need is we need the fire in our belly, but we need the ice in our head. So pressure then, on the subject of pressure, there's 4 different points of pressure in situational pressure. Number 1 is mental endurance. You need to take breaks regularly, drink water, talk to someone, get your thoughts out, go for a walk. Rest increases your mental endurance. Then you've got critical moment. Now, as it stands, what happens is during going through a crisis, one day might completely change for you. And now you're in a critical moment. You're faced with something new, some new information that you've now got to process. And that is one of those critical moments. Preparation is vital. So if you've planned for several different scenarios, you can jump from one track to another really quickly if you've planned for a different scenario. And at the critical moment, things need to change. Also, self-talk, or your IVVMs, which I'm going to go into in a bit. Composure, writing things down, ranting, all of that stuff I talked about. Battle toughness. Are you going to fight, or are you going to freeze? Are you going to run? We've got to be, fighters are winners. So we're going to have to fight, and you're going to have the determination, the resilience, and the grit to get through this stuff. And then we're talking about risk taking. Are you equipped with strong business decision-making techniques? If you're not, work with your coach to help you take calculated risk. Work with your coach to help you make better decisions. So mark yourself out of 10 in all of those areas, because if you're looking at your scores out of 10 in all of these areas, and you've got some room for improvement, then maybe you can start working on that stuff now to help you with this situational pressure, because the winner is 10 out of 10 in all of those areas. And that shape there makes a diamond. And just like diamonds are formed under massive amount of pressure, and so are winners. So right now, this is an opportunity for you to create much more mental resilience to create a stronger you, so that you are that diamond, so that on the other side of this, you're able to, well, diamonds, what are they? They're unbreakable, they're extremely valuable, and they're extremely attractive. So raise your hands if you'd like to be unbreakable, extremely valuable, and extremely attractive. Absolutely, everybody would like to be that way. Of course you would. Okay, fantastic. Now let's talk about decisions, okay? Because decisions, I love this expression from Tony Robbins. It's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. The only failure in life is the failure to decide. And decide, the word decide, it means to cut away from. If you make an incision, then you're cutting. If you're making a decision, you're cutting away from. Everything you now have in your life is a result of the actions you've taken, and every action that you've taken in your life has been fathered by a decision. So if you want to get good at making decisions, make more of them. And if you make the wrong ones, you'll learn from them. That's all good. You'll also learn quickly. And you'll learn quickly how to make better decisions as well. Decisions are like a muscle. The more you use your decision-making muscle, the better you get at. Now, we're constantly making 3 decisions in our life. Number 1, what to focus on. Number 2, what things mean. And number 3, what to do about them. There's 6 steps to making great decisions. First and foremost, what's the outcome you're looking for? What's the goal? What is the result that you're after? Then you look at all your different options, all the different options for achieving that goal. Then you want to look at, well, what are the consequences, the upsides and the downsides of these options? So look at pros and cons. That will really help you to evaluate which of the options you want to choose. Me personally, I think it's a great idea to, for each option, give a mark out of 5 to each of the pros and a mark out of 5 to each of the cons. Add up the score for each of the pros and deduct all the scores for each of the cons. Then that option has a score. Do the same for your next option, and that option will have a score, and the highest score should win. That gives you an evaluating tool to be able to do that. Then look at any of those cons that you've got on the option that you've chosen and decide how you're going to mitigate those cons. And then resolve. In other words, decide exactly what you will do. Here's some 4 rules for decision making then. Make sure you write them all out on paper. Like I said, it's a really good practice to do that. Method that I just told you there with the pros and the cons, marking them out of 5 and creating a score on each of them. Be clear about what it is you actually want. If you can't write a really detailed, passionate paragraph as to why it is you want that thing, you don't really want it, okay? So use that as a test to see if you really want it. Don't wait to be absolutely certain about it. Make a decision based on all the probability and the facts and the figures that you've got. Right now is not the time to procrastinate. You need to make decisions quickly in this particular crisis. So you need to make sure that speed is of the essence. Don't wait until you've got every single piece of certainty. And clarify the order of importance for all the outcomes that you identify. You've got to prioritize. So let's take this from general to specific. Motivation is what you get you started. Let's talk about habits. You're going to be doing stuff on a daily basis, okay? Because it's about all of those different habits. Habits are what you do on a daily basis. Now, we want to make sure that you're achieving everything that you want to achieve, but you're also taking care of your own human needs. These are 6 of them. The first one is certainty. The second one is variety. Certainty is about, we want to know that we're going to be taken care of, that we've got food, we've got shelter, that our basic needs are taken care of, that we've got money in the bank. Variety is, we get bored. I mean, to a certain extent, it's an uncertainty that we're looking for because we get bored real easy. But we know what we want. We've got our goals identified and we've got ways of getting there. Significance. We all want to feel that we actually matter, that our life matters, but your significance is about you living your life on your own terms. Connection. We're social beings. This is why this is so difficult for us at the moment with social distancing. So be connected with people. Be communicating with people as much as you possibly can face to face on Zoom or telephone calls. But connection is a really important thing to human beings. And the last 2 are growth and contribution. And right now I'm seeing a lot of contribution, a lot of people doing things for other people, and I'm seeing a lot of people growing as well. I'm seeing people growing because they're under pressure, and I'm seeing people growing because they're having to become more resilient, and I'm seeing people growing because they're investing more time, effort, and energy in their learning than they've ever done before. Remember, guys, if you're worried about money, if you want to earn more, first you've got to learn more. This is a great opportunity for you to become way more valuable. Your dreams come true through idealization, visualization, verbalization, and materialization. So here's a daily habit I'm going to give you right now. You can choose to ignore it if you want to, but I'm going to tell you now, this stuff works. Idealization. So stretch your mind with possibility. Stretching yourself on your goals is a great idea. Focus on what your absolute ideal outcome is on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, or your long-term goals. Choose that it is already yours. Don't use words like I want, because that means you're focusing on a lack of. Choosing that is already yours. One of the best goals ever set in the history of man was by John F. Kennedy, when he said in the early 60s to the American public, we choose to go to the moon. Not we'd like to go, or maybe we'll get there. He said we choose to go. So when you're looking at your ideal, choose that it's already yours, because your subconscious doesn't know whether you're lying to it or not. Your subconscious doesn't know that it's not already yours. Visualization, really important. There's a routine for you. Every morning, relax 10 minutes and relax 10 minutes at the end of the day. Make sure that you've got no distractions. Picture your ideal as if it's already true. If you haven't got one already, build a dream chart. All of the things that you want to achieve in your life, put them down on a dream chart so you can visualize them. Imagine the feelings that you would have if you already had those things. And believe truly that it is already yours. Remember, your subconscious can't decide whether it's real or not. Your subconscious is the thing that gives you dreams, giving you dreams. The dreams that we have are bizarre, are they not, most of us? And your subconscious doesn't really know whether those things are real or not. And when you wake up in the morning, quite often you don't know whether it was a dream or whether it was reality. But actually, the point is, you can, while you're conscious, plant seeds into your subconscious, and it doesn't know whether you're telling it the truth or not. And then finally, verbalization. Difficult one for some people, but I think positive statements that you're making to yourself and about yourself can be really, really powerful. Some people call them affirmations. 20 positive I am statements. Repeat them every day, twice a day, with passion. And state it in the present tense or in the process of. Be passionate. The more often you do it, the better it works. Here's some examples for you. Now, if you don't like the idea of calling it affirmations, call it a code of conduct. And at least have it written so that you can read it on a regular basis. It's not just what you do, which is going to influence your results, ladies and gentlemen. It's also who you become. What is your identity? We can all tell ourselves, I am this, I am that, and your subconscious will believe you. And you're promoting that story to your subconscious, and you're not helping yourselves in any way, shape, or form. But if you tell yourself what you are, and it's a positive thing, to build that identity, to build that resilience, and to build that belief and that mindset, it's going to serve you way, way better. Materialization then is the last part. The seeds you plant in your mind will grow. If you plant weeds, you're going to have a garden full of weeds. If you plant good stuff, you're going to get a beautiful garden. And the more energy and emotion you brings your goals to you faster. You've got to truly believe and energize your reticular activating system for this to work. Your reticular activating system is the bit of the brain that you program to notice things you didn't notice before. Like when you drive a car off the forecourt and all of a sudden, everyone else seems to be driving the same make and model that you were driving. But in order to energize that RAS, you've got to set those goals. The universe didn't suddenly put them there. They were always there before, but you didn't notice them. Your subconscious will allow you to notice the things that you plant into your subconscious. Remember, you can only do what you are. And you are what you think. So visualize often. And at the end of the day, here's another ritual that I recommend as well. So sit down and write, what have you been grateful for today? What's good about you today? What have you achieved? And what is on your achieve list for tomorrow? So the beginning of the day rituals, the end of the day rituals, do them every day. They are so important. These things are proven to get you in a better mood. They're proven to get you to see the brighter side of life, to be more confident, to feel great about yourself, to feel great about your achievements, to get you more focused, to get you achieve more during the day. If you would like all of those results for yourself, raise your hand. Fantastic. Okay, guys, to finish up, I want you to just reflect and share in the chat box. What sort of things have you thought, what blinding flashes of the obvious have you have? What sort of things are you thinking about now that you think you can actually change? And give me one thing that you're going to do differently based on what we've discussed here today, please. Just one thing in the chat box that you're going to do differently. A commitment from everybody to do something differently. So we're going to plan, we're going to write things down factually. That's it. See things as they really are, not worse than they are. Daily goals, plan, visualize often, vision and plan, have a written plan. Guys, if you haven't got plans at the moment and you want some help with that, the last Friday of the month, we're doing a 90-day plan, and you're more than welcome to come and join us for that. It's going to be about a 4-hour business plan. If you want to get some more information about that, if you just let us know, send us an email, we'll make sure that you get some details about that. Remember, there's no point worrying about something that I can't do anything about. Fantastic. Reminding me what I've been forgetting to do. Fantastic. That's what I'm here for. I'm going to visualize and plan more. Love the daily routines too. Fantastic, Jane. Thank you for that. Plan at goals, achievements through this quiet period. Use this quiet period to its advantage. This is probably the best time that you've ever had since you started your business to actually work on it rather than in it. Guys, I'm off now to do a coaching session. So I want to say thank you very much for attending this webinar with me.